Hello, this is Watch All About with another watch review, and in this review we're looking at one of the new releases from Christopher Ward. So this is the C7 Rapide Chronograph, and this is the quartz version. It does come in a automatic chronograph version as well, but obviously this is the quartz version. Price is £560, which equates to currently around $735. So we're going to have a look at it in much closer detail to see if it's a decent watch, decent value for money. So let's talk about the specs. So, by the way, I haven't had a chance to resize the bracelet. So, our sizes are a 42mm diameter, a nice slender height of 10.35mm, and then a lug-to-lug length of 48.2mm. So size-wise, 42mm I find to be quite a sweet spot for this kind of watch, you know, quite a sporty style watch. So, it's enough to give a decent impression on the wrist, but not too big, like 45mm for instance, so it looks silly. So I do like the diameter. I think the slender height as well really helps out the wearability of the watch. So it's nice and easy to wear because of just how slim it is. Obviously that's mainly thanks to the quartz chronograph being pretty thin itself, the movement. Weight-wise, it certainly is a nice, heavy, chunky timepiece. It's coming in at 167 grams. So obviously that is with a full bracelet. The steel bracelet is very, very nicely crafted. So you do get a real good sense of decent quality when you're holding the watch. It does feel like it's got some good chunk behind it. We have a water resistance of 100 meters or 10 atmospheres. So that's certainly enough for you to go swimming with it. I wouldn't recommend any proper deep sea diving or anything like that, but it does have a screw-in crown and a screw-in caseback as well, so you are pretty safe there to go swimming with it, which is good. The movement is the Ronda 5021.D, so that's a Swiss-made chronograph, obviously because the watch is Swiss-made. Quartz chronograph, so we have our top button which starts our chronograph, as you can see. And then we can stop it, and then we press the bottom button there to reset it. We have our 30-minute chronograph counter on the left-hand side there, and then just a running standard seconds on the right-hand side, as you can see. We also have a date window here, but we'll discuss that in more detail in a minute. Finally, one more spec. We have a 22mm lug width, which is a perfectly fine size for the size and shape of the case. I think it works really nicely. And then that, as you can see, trims down nicely to the buckle. Okay, so finally, the Christopher Ward standard warranty is 5 years, and that's very well renowned for being an excellent quality warranty as well. So you are, if anything does go wrong, you're in pretty good hands. Hopefully nothing will go wrong, however. So there we go. Okay, so let's have a look at it in closer detail. So firstly, let's start with the dial. So this one in particular is the green style. So we have a very sporty kind of theme straight up. It reminds me of like a Mini Cooper, with their classic British racing green kind of colour scheme. So the base of the dial has a very a gentle mottly texture to it, which is a nice alternative to just a flat straight up dial. So it does give a nice little variety of reflections, and it dulls any reflections quite nicely as well. Actually, I've noticed. We also have a number of very nicely constructed applied elements. Oh, excuse me, I've got a bit of a frog in my throat. So we have our sort of square triangular hour markers, as you can see there. If I just give a quick wipe, we see that they all have polished edges, so they reflect the light really nicely. They have a sort of like a sloped top and bottom as well. If we look at this in particular here, we can see there we have a sloped top, sloped bottom, and then our fully loomed center as well. So really, really nicely crafted as well. If you look at it up close, obviously we'll get the macro lens on in a bit, but really top quality construction here. We have a 12, nice big bold racing style 12 at the top as well. Again, really nicely constructed, and pretty much flawless. There we go. So really nice reflective elements, as you can see as I hit the light. Everything's reflected nicely. The hands as well, similar style. So we have a partially skeletonized base as well, which is quite nice, brings through a little bit of the color, but it keeps legibility thanks to the loomed tip, sort of like the top 2/3, if you will, and then just a subtle arrow points at the top, and a very, very tiny pitch to the hands as well. So very nice design, and they really do look the part as well. You know, at first glance, the dial does sort of look quite simple, but when you look at it in much closer detail, there is a few little elements here that you may not initially pick up on. So you have this cool tachymeter on the outer edge. We've got no rehout, but we've got this tachymeter right on the outer edge, and then we have sort of like an inner minute track as well. So that frames the dial really nicely. Provides a little bit of colour as well. And in the base of the dial, we have this chronograph printed, and the date window with a date wheel which is the same colour as the dial, which is always a plus. It is simply cut out the dial, but it is done to a nice degree, so it looks nice and neat, basically. Swiss made right at the bottom as well, very subtle. Our subdials have a really nice metallic surround to them as well, frames them really nicely, and then sort of like a champagne-y silver base to them. So they're very, very bold, very easy to read, but they also have, you know, a nice little sheen to them that makes it look, you know, really good quality. The logo at the top is just printed, but it's the Christopher Ward Swiss and English flag logo. There's been a lot of debate about the new logo, and usually how it's positioned on the left-hand side, sort of around 9 o'clock. I much prefer this style, so I think they've done an excellent job here. For me, this is my preferred way of displaying the logo. Just have the flag motif, and keep it center aligned, basically. And as you can see, we have it there as well. So moving on to the case. This is sporting one of their very new case shapes, and it is really, really nice to behold. They've done a really good job on it. Very sporty in reality. Nice, sleek, flowing lines. So if we have a look at this side to begin with, we have sort of like this central barrel breaking out. It's nicely curved, but a real variety of finishes, and just a really nice shapely affair. So the case itself is, you know, is rather complicated when you look at it in close detail. So the lugs themselves, we have again a variety of finishes. We have a nice little polished corner there, and then that flows into our side block, which is polished with a very thin brushed ridge around the bottom there, and again that also joins up with our bezel with a polished ring around it. And then if we come over this side, we have obviously our crown and pushers, but we have still our polished block poking through in between them over there, and we have nice big fat pump grip style pushers, which are really easy to use and feel really good in the wrist, under the finger as well when you're using them. The crown, as you can see, we do have the Christopher Ward logo, if I can get in focus. They're really nicely and detailed, and a decent knurled grip on that bad boy as well. So again, a really cool sporty kind of theme running through the entire case. The bezel, I'm not entirely sure what the insert is, but it's most likely painted aluminium, because it's certainly not ceramic or anything like that. But it's neat. It frames the dial well, and it's well printed, so you know, there's nothing to complain about really. And then again, we have this polished ring around it, which splits up the case really nicely. Moving on to the case back. Flip it upside down. So we have The only mention of Christopher Ward, the word, it's on the case back, and then we have the twin flags motif in this central ring, which is pretty cool. We have like a smaller, more subtle pattern at the base, and then the big version of the logo is polished on top. So we have some very lightly engraved specifics around the outside as well. So really nicely simple but nicely designed case back, really well executed as well. Moving on to the bracelet then, I always find Christopher Ward bracelets are really good, and this is no different. It's fully brushed on the top and the bottom, and then we have a polished sides. For me, I think this is very wise. Polished top always tends to get scratches or a little bit damaged, so having a brushed top will certainly last a bit longer visually. It's more resilient, so that's a good plus. And then we have their usual deployant clasp now with just the twin flags motif on top and 2 buttons either side just to release it, and the Christopher Ward logo on the inside elbow joint as well. Okay, so let's get the macro lens on and we'll have a look at it in much closer detail. I'll just give it a quick wipe. Starting off with the dial then. Here you can see the sort of a green mottled base, and we're introduced to our nice bold applied elements as well. So you can see they're very well executed for how small they are. Very detailed, nicely constructed as well. And there's our logo just printed on top, and likewise we have chronograph at the bottom half that's just printed as well. So whilst I'm down here, we'll have a look at the date wheel. So my mistake, it actually is black, but to the naked eye you couldn't tell really, so that's an interesting revelation, if you will. So this outer minute track, as you can see, has a really slight and gentle concentric circular pattern engraved in it, which is incredible attention to detail. We have a circular concentric circular pattern on these subdials as well, which isn't really visible to the naked eye, but when you get it right up close, as you can see, they do exist. So that's another instance of very nice close attention to detail. And then you can see our little metal borders as well, really well made and stuck on, so they're nice little touches. Moving on to our hands, so we have this ever so slight pitch and sort of like central block, which is a variety of polished and brushed finishing. Again, very nice construction. A nice bold red second hand as well. So now if we move on to our case, start off with our bezel. So that's our bezel insert, and we have this polished ring around the outside. Excuse the fingerprints. And then we move on to our lug. Again, look how nice and sharp and crisp and clean that polished shoulder is. Really impressive. They've certainly done an excellent job on these new cases, that is for sure. And then if we move over onto this side, you can see our brushed bottom edge, polished central section. There we go. Moving on to this side, we have our crown. So we have the logo, twin flags motif logo engraved there with our milled grip and our big fat pump grip style pushers. There we go. And moving on to the case back. Here's the central section with the twin flags base and a polished higher twin flags motif. Rapide, Christopher Ward, and then some very gentle and cheeky little specifics dotted around the outside there. So moving on to the bracelet, here's the top. So just a standard brush top and a polished. Oh, my mistake. It's actually brushed on the sides as well, so completely brushed. Apologies for that, misleading information. So yeah, very good, and will hopefully last a lot longer, having no polished elements on it at all. And moving on to the buckle, we have the Twin Flags logo engraved nicely and accurately there. Have a polished button on the side, as you can see. Push it in, open it up, and inside we have Christopher Ward. Okay. So the Christopher Ward C7 Rapide Chronograph Quartz is certainly an excellent example of how Christopher Ward have really, in my eyes, upped their game. The prices have gone up, there's no denying it, but for £560, I certainly do think you're getting a lot of watch for your money. When you compare it to other Swiss-made quartz chronographs around this price range, the build quality is much, much higher. Just the attention to detail on the dial is pretty exquisite. The new case shape as well, it's just really, really nice, and you can tell when a case has been machined to that next level up. Everything is so crisp and clean and sharp, and it just creates such a wonderful impression on the wrist. So I am really impressed with it. I think they've done an excellent job in stepping up their game once more, and I think it does justify the price tag as well. So yeah, it's a lovely watch, great design as well, as you can see. It's very striking design. So I really like it. So this was the Christopher Ward C7 Rapide Chronograph Quartz, and that's what it's all about.